Joining us now, MSNBC's Rachel Maddow, New York Times columnist David Brooks, former Democratic Congressman Harold Ford Jr., and Republican Congressman Aaron Schock. He is the youngest member of Congress, the first to be born in the 80s, we should point out. He represents the 18th District of Illinois, which includes Peoria, the 7th largest city in that state, and he's been chosen by his party's leadership to serve as a deputy Republican whip and even received a waiver to serve on 3 committees in the House instead of the usual 2. So welcome to the program for the first time. A lot to get to, all of you. David Brooks, the national security fight. You heard Vice President Biden taking on his predecessor. This is now a fully engaged argument about whether the Obama administration is sufficiently serious when it's taking on the war on terror. He said of Cheney, he's either misinformed or misinforming.
On the big picture, he's right. I mean, if you cover the Obama administration, they take it seriously. The idea that they don't know we're at war, they don't pay attention, they have the daily intelligence briefs. They take this utterly seriously. So Cheney's large charge is completely bogus. As for the specifics, I think there are a couple things he's right about. The KSM trial has become a total mess. What Joe Biden said today on the program doesn't pass the laugh test. The idea that we're going to try a guy, not acquit him apparently beforehand, are we going to make Dick Cheney the foreman of the jury? I mean, how do we know that? And then let him walk free. And then the second thing I think Cheney's actually right about is Mirandizing. If we had said we'd capture the 9/11 guys on September 10th, or one of them, should we have read that guy his rights and give him a lawyer? No, we should have tried to get some intelligence out of the guy.
Rachel?
There isn't in this case, and there hasn't been in any known modern terrorism case, any correlation between the usefulness of an interrogation and whether or not somebody gets read their Miranda rights. It just isn't the case. And in every single instance, every single terrorism case where there's been an arrest in this country in a terrorism case since 9/11, every single one has been handled, the person has been handled as a civilian criminal. There was a moment when Jose Padilla and Ali Al-Mari were handled in military custody. There's nothing magic about the time that they were in military custody. They didn't do any more magical forms of talking that they wouldn't do when they were civilians. So even on those grounds, I think that what you see as being correct in the vice president's charges, I just don't think it's there.
Furthermore, I think it's only fair. This president has been as tough as anyone's been on terrorists. Throughout his campaign, he promised he was willing to go into Pakistan if need be. He was criticized by Republicans and Democrats. As you heard Vice President Biden, they've taken down several of the top 20 that we wanted to find in Afghanistan and Iraq. Our efforts in Afghanistan, 35,000 additional troops, some in the Democratic Party were opposed to it. This president charged ahead. The efforts in the last few days, I think we can point around the edges a bit, but I think it's unfair to say this administration has not been tough, has not been focused and determined in going after terrorists.
Congressman Schock, the accusation that is still leveled and that former Vice President Cheney in an interview this morning is saying is that the administration does not consider these acts of war. They are still considering them criminal acts, which he says is the wrong way to keep America safe.
Well, look, all I can tell you is what my constituents are telling me and where I think most of Americans are, which is they see an American citizen who attacks our soldiers at a base in Fort Hood, Texas, tried in a military tribunal, and they see a foreigner who comes to our soil for the sole purpose of attacking our country and our American citizens, and he's read his Miranda rights. The majority of Americans, the polls indicate, do not support the president and this administration's plan to try these people in civilian court. And I think it's rightfully so why the administration is now backpedaling on their decision to hold these trials in downtown
Let me
New
just
York.
take on one issue, and then you can make your point. I want to go back to the Khalid Sheikh Mohammed trial, because I think this is the point that I was trying to ask the vice president about. Here was the headline in the Washington Post this week about how this is unfolding politically, which is not well for the administration. Obama to help pick the location of the terror trial, which can only be seen as a shot against his attorney general and his decision originally to put it in New York, which they reversed from. The tension here, Rachel, the whole reason why there are enemy combatants is to say these are warriors. They're not criminals. The president says that al-Qaeda is trying to destroy America, that we are at war. So these are warriors. And by virtue of the fact that the administration is saying we're never going to release this guy, even if he were to be acquitted, does that not make the point that they should not even enter our justice system where there is due process, where there is a presumption of innocence, where any prosecutor knows the consequences that the defendant walks if they're not convicted?
I think that even in the case of heinous crimes that have nothing to do with terrorism, that have nothing to do with foreign nationals, there is a frustration that there's a case that people who we believe are guilty might somehow get away. There's this frustration. That's what drives lynch mob mentality. I mean, we've always had that sort of tension. But the fact remains there have been 3 convictions under military tribunals, 3, and 2 of the people convicted are now free. It's no great guarantee that anything awesome is going to happen in terms of guaranteeing guilt and guaranteeing a long sentence to do the tribunal route. When Richard Reed came up in civilian court and he tried to make the case that he wanted to be called a soldier, he wanted to be treated in the terms of war, the judge in the case, William Young, said, "You are not an enemy combatant. You are a terrorist. You are not a You are not a soldier in any war. To call you a soldier gives you far too much stature. War talk is way out of line in this court. You're a big fellow, but you're not that big. You're no warrior. I know warriors. You are a terrorist, a species of criminal, guilty of multiple attempted murders." I think Americans cheer that sentiment and the idea that we're going to elevate Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and call him some sort of warrior when he's comparing himself to George Washington at Guantanamo.
But David Brooks, the president is expending a great deal of political capital on a decision that was being made to put him in the civilian system so that the rest of the world thinks we're fair. And yet the vice president this morning is saying he's going to be convicted, he's going to die. Other administration officials, including the president, has said that he'll most likely face the death penalty. How is this holding up American jurisprudence?
Yeah, well, there's a policy in transition. Eric Holder, the Attorney General, took this decision without consulting the president, without consulting the national security apparatus, did it on his own. And slowly and now quickly, the White House is pulling that back. And so they are going to try to, I think, take it out of New York, but they're not there yet. The idea that we can try someone and guarantee a conviction and guarantee they won't walk free, I mean, this is a betrayal of our values. I mean, what the correct charges against Gitmo were that it's a betrayal of our values. We're fighting our values in a way we're fighting this war in a way that betrays who we really are. And this is the essence of that. What Joe Biden said on the program today will be laughed at around the Arab world.
Congressman Schock, the larger question of Republican dissent, if you look at it that way, or attacks on this administration. The top terrorism advisor to the president said this on this program this last week.
I'm tiring of politicians using national security issues such as terrorism as a political football.
Are Republicans and Republican attacks against this administration helping al-Qaeda?
Absolutely not. And I think it's an insult to most Americans to suggest that their elected representatives who are carrying their views and the message of the majority of Americans to Washington and to this debate are somehow helping al-Qaeda. Mind you, many of these Democrats, including Mr. Brennan, who served in the last administration, faced many of these same attacks under then President Bush from the left. So the idea that we can't challenge the administration and their view on the fight on terrorism is completely
What happened
bogus.
to Democrats when they challenged President Bush in the same way?
Some of the same claims were made against them. But at the end of the day, we're representing mainstream America and the majority of views. And whether it's closing Guantanamo Bay and moving it to the heartland of America, whether it's trying these folks in downtown New York, whether it's Mirandizing terrorists who come to this country to attack us, the majority of Americans do not believe that Obama and his administration is right on these policies.
So you don't support the way the president is prosecuting the war on terror?
No.
I can appreciate the politics that are played here, and we're heading into a cycle, and we just met. I think he's a nice guy and a good guy. But to suggest that this administration is not focused in a right way and determined to keep America safe, I think it's just not right and foolish. I think there's a legitimate conversation about whether Khalid Sheikh Mohammed should be tried in my home city. I disagree with the administration. I'm glad now we are revisiting and looking at a different location. I was against it because I think the costs are too high. We're in the middle of a recession. It would cost them $225 million a year to try him there. We could spend that money in a jobs program, an education program, or even to pay down the debt. But to suggest to play politics at this moment, the Democrats raised the same concerns when Bush was in office, and the same answers were given, and some similar answers were given by Republicans. The truth of the matter is, Congress and the Senate ought to be focused on our efforts in Afghanistan, Iraq, and ensuring that our AFPAC policy works. The conversation around Pakistan and Kashmir and whether or not a resolution there will help us resolve our issues in Afghanistan are far more important than a volleyball going back and forth about who's at fault. Barack Obama and his administration deserve tremendous credit for what they've done up to this moment.
All right, quick comment, then I want to move to domestic matters.
First of all, I want to make it clear, nobody's suggesting that President Obama or his administration don't want us to be safe. What we're suggesting is he's taking unnecessary risks.
Can I just, I'm sorry though, what's the basis of the assertion that reading somebody their Miranda rights is unsafe? We did that with every single person who has been arrested on terrorism charges since 9/11. Nobody's ever made an issue of it until the Obama administration and this case with Abdul Muttalib. Literally, what's the problem with being read your rights? That wasn't the problem before.
Well, first of all, you suggested earlier that reading someone's Miranda rights has never indicated that they talk less to our intelligence
We've never
folks.
heard that from the FBI.
The fact of the matter is we do know that after the Christmas Day bomber was read his Miranda rights, that he did in fact stop cooperating with our intelligence.
That's not true, actually. I mean, it's not what we know from the people who've been involved in
But
it.
there is,
the factual basis of these assertions is so thin.
But
Rachel's right about that. In fact, I think when he was read the rights, the report suggested that he shared more information after. And that could be wrong, but the question.
But there is a debate. There is a debate about whether he should have been treated throughout as an intelligence asset without being Mirandized in order to bring people in who had more expertise specific to Yemen. Now, I don't think any of us can know at this stage how much could be gleaned from FBI interrogators who are very good versus other intelligence assets. So I think that debate will continue.